This week's Parsha, Parshas Vayera, begins Vayera Elav Hashem Ve'elonei Mamre V'hu Yoshev Pesach HaOlel Kechom Hayom. And God appeared to Abraham in the fields of Mamre. What was Avram doing? So Rashi tells us, based on Chazal, Rashi says, L'vakar es hachola, as the Gemara in Sota tells us, Hashem came to do the mitzvah of Bikor Cholam, of visiting the sick. And why was Abraham sick? Because, as we remember from last week's Parsha, that he just had a circumcision, and when you have a circumcision at 99 or 100, it's a little painful. In fact, when I was in the hospital for a kidney stone, the equivalent of a pregnancy, so I do know what it feels like. In fact, mine was unnatural, I like to add, therefore it was worse. But I had next to me a 70-year-old gentleman, I think he was Indian, and I asked him, and he seemed to be in a lot of pain. I asked him, what are you in for? He said, I just had a circumcision. I don't remember if it was for religious reasons or it's a health issue. But either way, he was in pain. So Abraham was a little older, and therefore he was recovering from surgery. Or, as the old joke goes, what's the difference between major surgery and minor surgery? When it's happening to you, it's minor. When it's happening to me, it's major. So either way, it was major surgery for Abraham, and God came to visit him. As Rashi writes from the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Chama bar Chanina, Yom Shlishi Lemilaso Haya. It was the third day after circumcision, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to ask, how you doing, Abe? How's it going? And we see the third day, it's a discussion in the commentators whether the third day itself is the most painful or the first 3 days. In fact, medicine's coming around also to realize that the third day after a surgery is the most dangerous and the most painful. So that's what God is doing. He came down to do the mitzvah of Bikor Cholam, of visiting the sick, one of the great miracles. And that's why one of the reasons we do mitzvahs Beit Adam L'Chaveiro is we imitate God. And therefore, just like God visits the sick, we visit the sick. So what do you mean by Elonei Mamre? Why did God appear to Abraham in the fields of Mamre? So Rashi writes, Hu shenasan lo eitza al hamila. Abraham was given advice about the milah from Mamre. Lefichach nigalav bechelko. Therefore, in the merit of that, he got the portion. God appeared to him in the fields of Mamre. So number one is, what do you mean he asked advice from Mamre? Let's go see. God tells me I should have a milah. Okay, I respect your opinion, but I'll get back to you. Mamre, what do you think? God said I should have a milah. Should I do it? And Mamre said, yes. Okay, God, I'm ready to do it now. So what does that mean exactly? Why was Avram asking eitzas? Obviously, there has to be more to it, as we'll see. Perhaps we'll get to tonight, maybe not. But that's a famous question they ask on Rashi. And one more before we get started. V'hu Yoshev. Yoshev, and he was sitting. Yoshev is spelled without the vav. It's spelled chaser. It's missing. And therefore, why? So Rashi writes, because Bikesh Lamod, he was about to stand up, like kids in school, the bell's about to ring, and they're like sitting on the edge of their seats ready to jump up and take off. So Avram, so too, he wanted to do mitzvah of entertaining guests so bad, he was just waiting around to see someone, and he could just jump up. He was Bikesh Lamod, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, no, you sit down and I'll stand. And Rashi tells us, based on the Midrashim, that in the future, when the Beis Din is sitting, we know God comes down, the Shechina Shora, the divine presence appears when the Beis Din is sitting. That's why, in fact, the Beis Din meets in the Sanhedrin Agadol, in the Lishkas Hagazos, in the Beis HaMikdash. So he said, when the Beis Din is sitting, I'll stand. And so, so why Like, why now? Why all of a sudden now is God teaching about halacha? Why is the Torah teaching about halacha about Dayanim sitting down? Who is being judged here? So either way, we'll have to come back to. We see is that Abraham was ready to get up, and he couldn't wait. He was looking around for guests, and that's what he writes. Pesach Ohel. He was right at the front, at the entrance of the Ohel, of the tent. L'rosim yesh over v'shav, to see if anyone was coming by. However, kachom hayom is like a chamsan, like in Israel, very hot. So God kept it very hot, so therefore no one would come and burden Abraham, and he'd give him a time to rest and get better. So what happens is God appears to Avram, and Avram is recovering from his circumcision, so the mitzvah of Bikar Cholim, and he's in the fields of Mamre. Mamre is the one who gave him advice on the Milah, and he's sitting by the tent waiting to jump up and do a mitzvah of Achnasas Archim. And then it says, Vayisa Vayera, he looks up, he lifts his eyes and sees, Vinei Shosha Natzim Nitzavim Elav, and he sees three people coming. It was actually three angels, and he runs to go get them. So, what do we need? What were the three angels? Vinei Shosha Nashim. So Rashi writes, Echad Lovas Yeratzara, one to come bring the good news that Sarah is going to have a baby. Ve'echad Lahafach Esadom, and one to overturn Sodom. Ve'echad Larapos es Avram, and one to heal Avram. So the three people came dressed up as Avram didn't know they were angels. He thought they were people, and he ran ahead and he took care of them. And from here, the Gemara in Shabbos deduces Gedola Hachnasas Archim Mikabolas Pnei Hashchina. Greater is entertaining guests than being in the divine presence. Avram was in the middle of speaking to God, and he said, God, sorry, I have to go now. These people need me, and he just took off. So that's how we learn. We learn this principle from Abraham. How did Abraham know it, by the way? How did Abraham know it was true? It seems a little chutzpah. You're in the middle of talking to God, and then you take off and take care of three strangers. So I heard a pshat from Rabbi Alpert, one of my Rebbeim. He says like this, how did Avram know it? God told him. But we don't see in the pasuk, in the verse, it doesn't say God told him, so how did Avram figure it out? So we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was known as the greatest of all prophets. And he was able to see face to face, so to speak, or maybe the back of God's head. That's the Jewish tradition. That's why the Torah can never be changed, because Moshe Rabbeinu is the best prophet ever, greater than Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and anyone else. And therefore it assures that the Torah will be eternal. Because if I could be a greater prophet than Moshe, then big deal, okay. God told me to change the Torah now. So therefore we ensure we don't have false prophets, or we don't ensure that we don't have false prophets, but at least we ensure that we know when there is a false prophet, when they try to change what the Torah says. So they point out that that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to speak to God almost face to face. All the other prophets, God appeared to them, they were asleep, they're in a daze, they're all blacked out, spaced out. It wasn't a regular communication. It was like pitch black. So every time God appeared to Abraham, it was pitch black. He was in a daze, he didn't really see anything. However, this time, all of a sudden, he's in the middle of, in God's presence, talking to God. God's doing Bikar Cholim, visiting the sick, and all of a sudden, he sees a picture of three people coming. Wait a second, what's going on here? And Avram says, I never saw anything before. He must be teaching me a message here. He must be telling me that I should stop talking to him and go ahead and start taking care of the people. As we know, as God can wait, the people can't wait. And that's why we have an expression in the Gemara, Chassid Shota, a pious fool. Someone's drowning in the ocean, and someone's in the middle of davening, and the person's screaming, help, help, save me. I can't go. I'm in the middle, obviously, stop davening, and you go ahead and save the person. And that's why, in fact, one of the reasons we don't make a bracha on a mitzvah ben adam lechaveiro. The Rambam's opinion is the rabbis only instituted blessings on commandments between man and God, and not between man and man. So one of the reasons why we don't have a bracha on commandments between a man is because imagine someone comes to your house, they're hungry. Hi, I need some food. Sure, certainly. You go into the kitchen, you get something ready. It's 1 second. Baruch Atah Hashem, etc. The time you make the bracha, the guy drops dead, or he gets or he's in the pain of hunger. So obviously, it's interfering with the mitzvah. So therefore, Chazal never instituted a bracha. So Avram learned it from God. God, why is God showing me these people? It must be, it's time for me to take care. So that Avram learned it from God. We learned it from Avram. Gedola haknosus archem mikabolas pnei hashchina. Greater is entertaining a divine presence. Greater is entertaining guests than being in the presence of God. So, in fact, we find that it says Gedola. So in many religions, there's a conflict between commandments between man and God, a man. There's a famous incident, they say, over from one of the other religions, that someone was walking with his son, and he was, I guess traveling. Are we there yet? But instead of asking, are we there yet, he said, Daddy, do you love me? He said, of course I love you. I have to. You're my son. No, he didn't say he has to. Yeah, of course I love you, right? Okay. 10 minutes later, Daddy, do you love God? Or does God love me? So the person says, of course I love God. So the son said to the father, how could there be room in your heart to love God and also love me? The father said, you're right. The love for God should be totally absolute, and there is no room to love anyone else. That is not the Jewish approach. That, in fact, that's why some have a practice saying right before davening, Hareini muchen lezumen, and that's Rabbi Aitken used to say every morning, sitting right over there, I remember him, these, V'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of loving the neighbor than he's davened, because to show this concept that there is no conflict, that in fact that's what it's gedola. It's not that it's a conflict, but that's what God wants from us. Is to do greater. That's why when you do a mitzvah ben adam chavero, it's also a commandment between man and God, because you're fulfilling God's will. It's, so to speak, you get 2 pluses. And therefore that's what Avram's telling us. It's gedola hachnosus archem. It's not that, that's how we see that's how we get closer to God, by doing hachnosus archem and entertaining the guests. That's even a higher level. So we know Avram is known for the midas hachesed, for the attribute of chesed, of acts of loving kindness. And in fact, the Gemara in Sota tells us, actually the Gemara in Sukkah tells us, in 3 ways chesed is greater than tzedakah. What are the 3 ways that chesed is greater or broader, I should say, than tzedakah? Tzedakah can only be given to the poor. Chesed can be done on the rich and the poor. Tzedakah can only be given to the living. Chesed can be done to the living and the dead. And tzedakah can only be given with money. Chesed also involves bodily exertion. And in fact, that's the ultimate chesed shalemis, as we'll get to in next week's Parsha Chayei Sarah, where Avram was involved in the kfura, in the burial of Sarah. That's the ultimate. So in 3 ways, chesed is greater than tzedakah. And so we see that quantitatively it's much broader. However, the Maharal explains that not just quantitatively, but qualitatively it's different. Fundamentally it's different. Because what's the fundamental difference between tzedakah and chesed? The difference is tzedakah, you're walking down the street and a beggar comes to you and says, could you help me out? So you say, sure. The mitzvah of tzedakah, they send you a letter in the mail to some yeshiva or whatever, poor person, and you give it. That's tzedakah. But that's an external thing, is you aren't thinking about giving tzedakah. Someone approached you, you got a phone call on the internet, and it got you to think, you did a good deed of tzedakah, but it's a reaction to something that happened. Chesed is the opposite. Chesed is, it comes from within. What's the ultimate chesed? We learn out from the beginning of this week's parsha. that Abraham took care of the angels. They were angels. He didn't know they were angels, but they were. They were people. So do angels eat? No. So the whole purpose of this whole scenario where Avram is running, taking care of all the animals and food, he's going through all this whole big promotion for nothing. I mean, not for nothing. The angels weren't really eating. So it's not for nothing. It's very powerful. But the purpose of Chesed is for Avraham, not for the recipient. God realized that Avram Avinu was having more distress by sitting in the tent looking around to do good deeds. Whoever the good deed was doesn't make a difference. He'll find a release on anyone. The point was, tzedakah is the purpose is for the one you're giving to, but chesed is all about you in a good way. And it's for you to become a giver. That's what the Rambam writes. If you have an option to give $100 at one time or give $1 every morning in shul, so the Rambam writes you should give $1 every day because of Rov HaMaisa, because each act you do is powerful. We'll get into the two parts of it. Obviously, someone to give $1 million one time could do a lot of good. So it's right from the part of the poor person or the recipient, they might be better off being supported with $1 million. But from your angle, from you giving, the fact you give every time, that has an impact on you. And that's why, so we see the source of chesed it comes from within. And that's why the ultimate of chesed is giving, is to teach us to become a giver. And that's what we learn from Avraham Avinu. If we spend the day with Avraham Avinu and see how to become a mensch, he teaches us how to fulfill hachnos orchim. In fact, we see later on he goes around getting all the food. Then it says yukach na ma'at mayim. He says, let me bring a little bit of water. So the question is, why is he being stingy on the water? When it comes to everything else, the steak, the French fries, the dynamo ribs, the Miami ribs,
the mustard,
the spicy mayo, the fries, I don't need to go on, you're getting the point here. He gave them doubles and triples. Yet when it came to water, he was very stingy. Why was Avram so stingy with the water? So there are two pshat, and one is on the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim says there are two halachas of entertaining guests. There's halacha of chashteu, you have to suspect them. In other words, a stranger off the street, you can't be naive. You can't leave them in your house alone and you get back all your silver and money's gone. You can't be naive. But there's a mitzvah of kabdehu, of honoring them. So some people are very big on the chashteu. Oh, you know what? I don't really know this person. I'm waiting till I get my police report back and FDI then I'll have this person over, or I'll have these people. So some people put too much emphasis on the chashteu and they miss up on the primary of the kabdehu. But the main, so Avram, when it came to kabdehu, he was very liberal and had as much as you want. What's the chashteu here? Because during those days, people used to worship the sand, the earth on their feet. So he gave them water to wash off their feet. So have a little water. I don't know if you're an idol worshiper, but just in case, here, take a little bit of water. So when it came to kashteu, you have to do the minimum, but then that's it, just the minimum. You don't need the FBI report. However, when it comes to kabdeu, that's when you go out. That's what the Chafetz Chaim warned. I heard another pshat from my Rabbi, from Nissen Alpert. He explains as follows. What's yukach na me'at mayim? Avram's teaching us a lesson in chesed. That when does everyone become tzaddikim when it comes to chesed? You know what, Dave? Someone's coming in from the airport at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sure you don't mind going in and getting them. We need something to be picked up in Toronto. We're going to Niagara. When does everyone become a tzaddik? At someone else's expense. That's what Avram's coming to tell me. If you want to be a tzaddik, do it at your own expense. When it came to Avram doing whatever he had to do, he went all out. But as Rashi tells us, he wasn't getting the water. He told the servant to get the water. And it wasn't like you walk into the sink here, you turn on the water. There were wells miles away. They were heavy to carry. So Avram's teaching us a tremendous lesson in chesed. If you're doing it yourself, all the hidurim, do everything you can. But if you're telling someone else to do the chesed, it's the opposite. Then you can be the minimalist. If Shol Salanter, one of the great Bali Musar, he used to say, what's the definition of a tzaddik? People have this the opposite. The definition of a tzaddik is to worry about your own spirituality and the other person's gashmias, physical needs. Everyone seems to be a tzaddik to worry about everyone else's spiritual needs, but they don't seem to be helping them on the physical. A tzaddik is just the opposite. You worry about your own spiritual growth, and you worry about someone else's physical. And that's what he's saying. Yukach no ma'amayim. He's teaching us a tremendous lesson in chesed. If you're going to do it yourself, you could spend all the time you want. You could spend 6 hours, 3 hours. If you're barbecuing, that's great. But if you're telling someone else to do something for you, then yukach no ma'amayim. So we have the Chafetz Chaim pshat of focusing on the honor and not on the suspecting, or about pshat of teaching us, if you're doing it, then you do all the hidurim. So if we follow Avraham Avinu around for a day, we learn to become a mensch. And that's what we see, that the Shlosh Anashim, it says there were 3 angels. They came to do 3 different things. Echad Govaser es Sarah. One came to tell Sarah about the good tidings. One comes to destroy Sodom, and one comes to heal Avraham. Because why do we need 3 angels? Why can't one do the trick? One angel couldn't tell Sarah the good news, heal Avraham, and destroy Sodom and Amorah? So we have a tradition, whatever it means, an angel only can do one job at a time. And therefore, God had to send a separate angel. And then at the end of Rashi, he says, and the angel that healed Avraham went to save Lot. So what's going on here? I thought an angel only could do one job. First he says an angel can only do one job, and we need 3 separate angels. And then he goes ahead and says the angel, it's falling down the tripod, check it out, it's been moving. That the angel that, first I wasn't sure, I thought I was just dreaming, and I just saw it moving again. So it's still set up or not? I could continue or not?
Yep,
yeah,
good.
So this one is saying you need 1 angel for every angel, you need 1 angel per job. Then at the end it says, and the angel that healed Abraham went to save Lot. So what do you mean? So I thought you wanted 1 angel per job. So the Mefarshim explained it. Not everyone zochet to an angel. You have to be on that level to warrant an angel. So apparently Lot did not deserve an angel on his own. So what happened? So therefore once the angel was down already, so once he took care of Abraham, he took care of Lot. But why? But they explain it's the same job. Because what would have happened if Abraham, after he just recovered from major surgery, heard his nephew was killed, or something bad happened to his nephew? It would have been shooken up, and he might not have recovered then. So that's all part of the same job. Healing wasn't a separate job. It was the same angel because it was the same job. And in fact, there's a famous Maisa with Rav Shlomo Kluger. Someone came to him and had the question, we just had a child, the bris is I guess today, and we want to name, our father's dying, the doctors say it's going to be any day now, any moment, and we want to name the child after our live father. This is an Ashkenaz question because Sfardim name the people after lives, so they wouldn't have to wait. So it's an Ashkenaz question. Should we wait until and see if our father dies, then we can name the kid, or should we name the kid? So he said, name the child right now. Don't wait for your father. Okay. And sure enough, they did, and of course the father got better and lived happily ever after. So everyone went around town saying, "Wow, Rav Shlomo Kluger, the miracle worker." Like a Hasidic, he was no Hasidic Rebbe, he wasn't happy about this. People were saying he's a miracle worker. So he got up to give his sermon that Shabbos and said, I don't know what everyone's talking about. They think I'm a miracle worker. How did you know to name the child? I learned Rashi and Chumash, that's why I know. It's this week's Parsha. So we know we have a tradition that Eliyahu HaNavi comes down to every bris milah. And therefore, we have a moment where you could pray. You say, help, and you have a moment to get any prayer in. So So I knew once Eliyahu, the father or grandfather, didn't have enough schus to warn Eliyahu on his own right, but once Eliyahu came down to the house of the Milah, he'd go next door to the next room and go take care of his father, and that's how I knew he'd get better. It's the Rashi and Chumash. Lot didn't deserve it on his own, but once he came down for Abraham, so then he also came and took care of Lot. So let's summarize. So we spoke about the different lessons we learned from Avraham Avinu, that God came down to do Bikar Cholim and Abraham, and he saw Abraham was in so much distress that he couldn't stick around, so he made the angels come by. And we learned out from here, greater is entertaining guests than speaking to God. And we said it's not a conflict. In fact, you become a greater, that's how you get close to God, by entertaining guests. It's even Gedola. And then we pointed out, if we follow around Avraham Avinu, he was the king of Chesed. And that's why he went away, and we said the different ways Chesed is different than Tzedakah, besides in terms of breath, that it's not only to the poor but to the rich, not only to the living but to the dead, not only in money, bodily exertion, but fundamentally the purpose of Chesed is for Avram. Tzedakah is for the poor, but Avram is he had a need a release to get better, and therefore that's why Chesed is for the giver. That's what the Rambam says: the more you give, the better, and that's why we follow Avram around and see how to become a man. Yukach na ma'ayim. Why a little bit of water? Why so stingy? So either the Chafetz Chaim, because you focus on the honor and only a little bit on the Chashteo, maybe they were idol worshippers, or a Rav Alpert, a lesson in Chesed. When you're doing it yourself, then you go all out, but when you're getting someone else to do something, then you do the minimum. Like you saw Salanta's definition of a tzaddik. And then we discussed the Rashi. Rashi says that 3 angels came down. Why do we need 3 angels? Because an angel can only do one job at a time. They only do one job at a time. So what do we so how could he go ahead then and take
one
care?
Person.
Yeah,
one person.
No, one person. And
because he did 2 jobs for Abraham and Lot, because Lot wasn't counted.
No, right. No, that's the question. How could he do 2 for? If the angel could only do one job, how could the same angel go and save Lot? So that's the answer. We said is because it's the same job. It's all about he came to heal Avraham. In order to keep Avraham healthy, he had to make sure Lot was taken care of as well, because Lot didn't deserve the same angel, and that's the story with Shlomo Kluger. That's how he knew that you should do the bris right away, have Eliyahu come down and take care of the grandfather. And in fact, one last point we'll conclude on, that we know where these 3 angels come from. Why 3 angels? So, do we know Avram just did the mitzvah of Milah? There's 3 parts to the mitzvah of Milah. There's the Milah, cutting off the foreskin. There's the Priya, revealing it. And there's the Metzitza B'Peh, is for health reasons, to make it the child. So I saw in one of the Hasidic Sfarim, they point out, we know that when you do good deeds, you create good angels, Pi Kabbalah. When you do bad deeds, you create bad angels. So since Avram just did the mitzvah of Milah, which has 3 parts, he created 3 angels. And they point out that the Milah that you do, you're cutting off the bad from the good, what was that? That's the angel that went and cut off Sodom. He took care of the bad. The evil, the Priya, to come to reveal the foreskin, he came to reveal the news to Sarah. And the Metzitza, the one who came for the health of the child, he was the one who went ahead and healed Abraham. So the 3 angels that came, that were created to the mitzvah of Milah, those are the 3 Milahs that did their appropriate task. The one who separated the Arla, cut off the Arla, so he cut off Sodom, he destroyed Sodom. The Priya was to reveal the news to Sarah. And the Metzitza, that was the angel that went to heal Abraham as well as Lot.